Welcome, Admirals, to my Allied campaign in WarPlan Pacific. In this video, part 15, we're going to talk a little bit about supply. It shouldn't be very long, hopefully, and but I think it's worth noting a few things. All right, so that because supply is a big deal here, and you see my campaign now is in full swing. It's January 1944. I have all the forces in place really to hopefully win the campaign. I've got a year and a half of campaigning left to go. So let's talk supply. So first thing is that, and I think it's borne out in the war, is these guys right there. I It's not until this game that I realized just how important it was to keep submarines in their trade convoys, okay, and sinking the Japanese merchant marine. This is historical. Um, the submarine campaign against Japan is devastating, and when we look at supply, okay, what we can see here, what we can't see here, all right, is is where is the um, major supply points in for Japan. And for Japan, these things right here, see, that's a main supply. If you look, that's main supply. It's in green, okay? And if you look all around the map, all right, you'll notice that for Japan, you won't notice it because you're playing the Allies, okay? But they don't have any green major supply in any place except for in Japan. They have three places here that are major supply points. So everything, all of their raw materials and so forth, okay, include not just oil, but anything that they have, okay, bauxite, iron ore, all of this stuff has to go through their trade routes and up to Japan. And then from Japan, it gets shipped out. Okay, it gets shipped out. Yeah, shipped out by merchants to main supply ports throughout the Pacific region to keep their people supplied. Of course, you have smaller areas where there is no main supply port, but they're still kept in supply as well. Very much like, let's see, let's go to ours. Just it's very much like here. Okay, what you do is, if you look here, so here's Britain, and you see Britain has to supply all of these ports. Okay, and that's why you can't do anything to change them. All right, so this port here, Port Vila, will always have 20 supply points, and Britain will be trying to maintain them at 20. Okay. Okay. Of course, and then there's others. Again, you can't change any of this stuff. So this is just going on in the background. You do have major convoys that you can make by your own, okay, and send them to different countries, but in general, most of these islands, okay, are being supplied automatically based on the quantity of merchant marine that you have. And that is why when you look at my production, you see that I'm not using all of my merchant marine. Okay, I've got 31 extra merchant marine here, and in the U.S. we've got an extra 15 or so. This is to help. Um, this is to help to supply these islands, which are owned by um, Britain. You see now, as you can see here, this is where my navy is in Rabaul and Manos, and you can see here, okay, that it's although it's a major supply point. Notice that it's only 32 of 100. So actually, Britain is struggling to keep this port supplied, just like in Rabaul. We have 92 of 160. Okay. The difference, of course, is that in Rabaul, I don't have so many forces. I have 11 ships, infantry, and an aircraft. While in Manis, I've got 37 ships. Okay, 37 ships. So it's very difficult for the UK to try to keep that supplied. And if you send all of your if you're using all of your merchant marine, okay, to ship stuff to other countries, then they don't have the merchant marine to supply these other ports. Okay, this is one of the reasons why, in there you have extra places here like Espirito Santo, where you can actually improve the port to a level 5 port. But when you do that, it's also going to increase the amount of supply that needs to go there. So maybe not such a good idea if you don't have to. Same thing goes with Fiji, okay, which is also a major supply point for the United Kingdom if you build it up, okay, to the 5 level. So that's one important thing to remember. You need to have excess merchant marine to keep sending the supply stuff to Rabaul, Henderson Field, so that the supply keeps going. So that's one thing there. Remember, have excess merchant marine. Okay. And the moment I'm able to shift these forces out of here and go somewhere else, like truck, then that will become an American responsibility, and these guys will no longer be just pulling supply from the United Kingdom. So again, returning to the Japanese situation, Japan, all of the stuff, all this oil and stuff is going through their shipping lanes to Tokyo, and they're also producing men and material and stuff like that in Japan. So all the stuff first comes into here. All the stuff that they've captured, like this, okay, iron ore, it's being shipped to Japan, and then Japan does what it needs, and it sends it back out to all the different islands. Okay. Now, so one thing to, so one thing, for example, in this game, okay, when we look at the supply, all right, okay, Saigon, I believe before, well, I'm not sure if it was Saigon, but it's definitely Rangoon. Rangoon was a major port for these guys. Does the supply line go in through there? No, it goes through. It goes all around. Okay, so it doesn't go through there, but it's a major port, and when you're fighting up here at the very beginning of the game, the Japanese are are sending supply to this area here. Now, if you notice, looking at a supply point of view, I've got the Japanese backed up here now, and they don't really have a whole lot of access to supply. They do have these ports here, and these ports are shipping supply to these guys down here. Okay. And probably a little bit here as well. Okay. But the major supply is coming down here, I believe. So when I move this guy over here, okay, I'm going to cut the supply to the rest of these forces down here in China. I mean in Indochina, and I should be able to wrap them up pretty easily. Once this is done, once this happens, okay, and I take Haiphong, that's going to open the South China Sea route, and once that happens, then these areas here, which are not receiving supply, and Singapore as well, when I capture it, okay, you'll be able. Okay, the British will then be able to send a supply through there, and so what I'm looking at going forward is cutting down on the amount of supply that, for example, that I'm sending to India, because India is not going to need it anymore. India and the United Kingdom, they cannot go into China because they do not cooperate. So once I wrap this up here and down here, and I look over here, okay, and you can see I am sending a bunch of stuff to India, okay, from the United States, and then I can get rid of this this trade route here, because India, first of all, let's take a look at India. India isn't going to need oil. They're producing a lot of production because of places that they have under their control now, like here, okay, which is iron ore. So, and their ability to project power isn't going to be very much, because unless you can get your Navy, your British Navy in here to move these guys across, and that's one thing that I might try, then they really don't need all the supply that you're sending to them. When we look at the victory points, okay, there are no victory points down here, and there are no victory points down here. So it actually, you do not need to take these areas here. All right, you don't need to take these areas here. So the Brits and their allies, once they take Indochina, they've done their job. And the Americans, once they start moving out into the Pacific, okay, for example, I'm going to be attacking Truck next, which we can see is a major port. Well, then America is going to need merchants to make sure that they're getting plenty of supply going through there. So that's where I'll have to keep an eye on that. But that's where, I mean, it's not like we don't have problems with production, but we may have problems with transporting it. Okay, so if necessary, I can drop down my exports to places like India, if I drop it off of India, okay, I'm going to get 35 extra transports, and these transports are then going to be um, sending fuel and supplies to these other islands that I captured. So I would expect that this list is going to increase. Yeah. Notice Honolulu is a main supply port, and it gets 180, okay, in supply. So that's one thing to bear in mind. And for the Japanese, um, once you once this is this is this is why these guys in the end are coming out to be my most important strategic tool, because once they kill off the rest of these merchants, then everything else is going to be, all of their supplies are going to be cut to everywhere. So they're going to be cut to China. They're going to be cut to the Philippines. They're going to be cut to everywhere. So that when I attack the Philippines, these guys will not be able. They will not be able to get any supply whatsoever. And what I notice from other games that I played before is that in other games that I played before, the Japanese, their air got to huge amounts. Okay, and the reason for that was because I wasn't interdicting their um, supply routes and knocking off their merchants. All right, because you know an air unit way out here isn't going to be able to do anything if Japan can't ship oil back to them, believe it or not. So what I was doing in other games is that I was marching in. This was on a lower difficulty level, coming in here, taking over these areas here, and all the Japanese. Although I was destroying all the infantry units, all the air units fly back to Japan. And as you can see right now, there's no air units in Japan. There are no air units in Japan. And another thing is that, so far, although I had major clashes with the Japanese when I attacked Rabaul and Manus, which are very big, important stepping stones here to go out to places like Truk and over here, and eventually the Philippines. What I noticed was, although I had big naval battles with them here, um, the naval battle, their naval side is actually not done a lot. And before, I had Navy ships out here chasing my submarines around, and now they're not doing that. So obviously, I'm having some effect on their units, which use oil, which are the Navy and the Air Force. So also, when I take Haiphong here, I believe that's going to open up the South China Sea trading route. And once that happens, then then ports like this, which have absolutely no supply, and this one has no supply, okay, we'll start getting supply. Okay. And you'll be able to see. I think it's America that gets it. Okay, I think it's America where the South China Sea will open up and you'll get this little thing here, active convoys, and then I'm gonna have to move my convoys, my escorts into the South China Sea to defend my my merchant marine, giving supply to those guys. Of course, it won't really matter much. Okay, but that's what's going on. So overall, I just wanted that's just the basic thing there, just the basic how supply is playing out in the game as I'm pushing now into 1944. To be quite honest with you, I mean, when we look at the victory points, the Axis is still way ahead. They're way ahead, and um, although we have some victory points in China here to take, we still have here, Haiphong, Hong Kong. We still have a number of places on the continent over here, which we will for sure take. But we also have a lot of victory points out at sea here. Okay, and the Philippines, which are not going to be so easy to take with only a year and a half remaining. I'm kind of actually wondering if I'm going to be able to take all of these victory points. I have enough men and material. The question is, do I have enough time? So anyway, that's just a quick video on the middle to end game on supply here. At the very beginning, you need tons of merchants because the Japanese will attack your supply lines. But even as you and you'll think, well, this is all they're doing is draining me of resources. But in the end, you're going to need those resources to supply these other places, and you need to keep moving your forces forward. If you look here, for example, so they're not depleting areas. Look here, you see, I've captured these areas here, these ports here. Okay, but they have no ports. They have no supply. Okay, and they're from the United States. They're from the United States. They have zero supply. So I would imagine what that's telling me is that let's go back here. Imagine what that's telling me is I don't have enough merchant marine, even though it says I have extra. I don't have enough merchant marine to actually be able to support these guys. Okay, so let's see. This is okay. That's the USA. Okay. This is the UK. UK. Okay. He's getting plenty of supply now because I moved his aircraft out of there, and so now he's going to fill up, hopefully, or get close to it, and we'll see if supply starts rolling into here. As a matter of fact, let's take a look at Wewak. Let's see if that's on the Brits list. See, there you go. There's Wewak. Okay. There's Wewak. So, actually, actually, although it may seem as if I've got a lot of merchant marine here, okay, it's actually not enough. And in the end, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cancel some of these or lower some of these. I believe I'm going to have to lower some of these exports that I'm doing from Britain, for example, and from the USA to be able to adequately supply me as I go into these islands and the Philippines and start driving up my supply requirements. So, yeah. Interesting game. Really interesting because of the supply implications your moves make and the builds you make, and whether or not you can actually support what's going on. For example, these guys here are not getting reinforcements, I believe. Are they getting reinforcements now? Okay, they weren't getting reinforcements for quite a while until I took Saigon, but a lot of these guys aren't getting reinforcements because the supply situation is so bad in this area. You still are able to reinforce with trucks, okay, and supply is flowing. It's just that it's just not enough to supply to it's just not enough to to send enough supply into the area. See this right here, we can easily send. India can easily send supply there, but notice they're not getting any supply. And even when I open up the South China Sea, I doubt they'll be getting a lot of supply. So actually, you're India, in this campaign in here, you're just on the edge. You're on the edge all the time with supply. And so I'm thinking about, as I move forward here, how that's going to impact the U.S. campaign, because they're going to have to take, you, you don't have to take all of these little teeny islands, because, you know, because if I take this, for example, if I take this island here, which actually has no significance to the war nor to victory points, okay, I'm going to have to supply that port with supplies, okay? So it doesn't make any sense to actually capture it. Okay. The only reason I went over here was because there were victory points that I had to get. Okay. And when you come over here, if you look at victory points, you only have this one here. So there's really no reason to 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 attack and take these islands here. All it's going to do is going to um, steal supply away from where you really need it. Of course, to get over here, you're going to have to come um, to Inuitak over here, okay, because it is a major supply base, and that's the only way that you're going to be able to go from here to truck. To get over here, you're going to have to take Inuitak as well, right? So, I mean, it's really the game is really now playing out as the war actually did. Come up, Solomon's campaign, and all of this is all finished, and now it's time to drive into the Pacific and um, push for the Philippines, and of course Iwo Jima. Which in the end, and Okinawa was very important, but so that you can bomb them if you want, and we need to bomb them for nuclear bombs, which ends the war, right? So anyway, that's just a quick overview of how I am looking at the supply situation as I'm getting into the end game of this campaign. Hope you found that informative. I'm not sure I got everything right there. If you notice that I messed something up, please go ahead and let me know. But that's how I'm kind of looking at the overall supply situation. And again, hope you found that informative. And in the next video, we'll be attacking Truk, moving into the Pacific. Till then, we'll see you there.